The rain came down in sheets, a gray curtain sealing us inside our fifth-floor Brooklyn apartment. Lightning cracked, shaking the windows, and I swore the world was ending right there on that August night. Ezra, my roommate, stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the storm, and I felt something shift in mesomething I'd been running from for years. We'd been living together for 8 months. Two strangers thrown together by a Craigslist ad and a desperate need for cheap rent. Ezra was 26, a graphic designer with a quiet intensity, all dark curls and eyes that seemed to see through you. I'm Jamie, 25, a barista with dreams of being a writer, always dodging questions about my past. We got along fine, shared dishes, split bills, traded sarcastic jabs over breakfast, but there was always a wall between us. That night, the storm tore it down. It started with a power outage. The lights flickered, then died, plunging us into darkness. Great, I muttered, fumbling for my phone. Ezra laughed, a low, warm sound that made my chest tighten. Guess we're camping indoors, he said, grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. We lit candles, their flames dancing across the walls, and sat on the living room floor, the storm howling outside. It was just us. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, and nowhere to hide. Ezra pulled out a bottle of cheap whiskey from the cabinet. To surviving the apocalypse, he toasted, passing me the bottle. I took a swig, the burn grounding me as I watched him. His hands, calloused from sketching, moved with a grace I'd never noticed before. We talked really talk for the first time. He told me about growing up in a small Ohio town, where being openly bi meant being a target. I left at 18, he said, staring into his glass. Never looked back. I wanted to tell him about me, about the feelings I'd buried since high school, when I'd kissed a boy at a party and spent the next year terrified someone would find out. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I asked, "You ever miss it? Home?" He shook his head, but his eyes said something else. The storm raged on, and so did we, trading stories, fears, dreams. By the third drink, I was dizzy not just from the whiskey. Then Ezra looked at me, his gaze steady. "Jamie, why do you always pull away when I get close?" My heart stopped. I could have lied, brushed it off. But the storm, the candles, his voice, it stripped me bare. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't push, just nodded, like he understood. And maybe he did. The night blurred into something else, something alive. We laughed about stupid things, his terrible taste in reality TV, my obsession with old sci-fi novels. But there was a current beneath it, a pull I couldn't ignore. When our knees brushed, neither of us moved away. The air felt heavy, like the storm had trapped more than just our bodies in that apartment. By 2 a.m., the rain hadn't let up, but we were closer, physically and otherwise. Ezra leaned in, his breath warm, and said, "I'm glad we're stuck here." My pulse raced. I wanted to say something back, to cross that line, but fear clawed at me. What if this ruined everything? What if I wasn't ready to face who I was? The storm didn't care about my doubts. It kept us there, locked in that moment. And I knew something was coming, something bigger than both of us. The candles burned low, their wax pooling on the coffee table as the storm's roar softened to a steady hum. Ezra's question hung in the air. Why did I pull away? I wanted to answer, but my past was a locked box, and I'd lost the key years ago. I grew up in a small town in Georgia, where different was a dirty word. My dad was a pastor, my mom his echo, and their love came with conditions. At 16, I kissed Sam, a boy from my algebra class, behind the bleachers after a football game. It was quick, clumsy, and electric until my best friend saw us. By Monday, whispers followed me down the halls. My parents found out, and the shouting matches began. "This isn't you, Jamie," Dad said, his face red with shame. I left at 17, cut ties, and swore I'd never look back. New York was supposed to be my fresh start, but fear followed me like a shadow. Ezra watched me now, waiting, his eyes soft but piercing. I took another sip of whiskey, the burn loosening my tongue. "I don't pull away because of you," I said finally. "It's me. I'm not good at this." He tilted his head, curious but patient, and it undid me. I told him about Sam, about the fallout, about the years I spent pretending I was someone else. Each word felt like peeling off a bandage, raw and painful but freeing. He listened, never interrupting, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. When I finished, he said, "You're not that kid anymore, Jamie. You don't have to hide here." His words hit like a punch, because he was right, but I didn't know how to stop hiding. I'd built walls so high I didn't know where the door was. We moved to the couch, the space between us shrinking. The storm had trapped us, but it was his presence that held me captive. He told me about his first love, a guy named Marcus, who broke his heart in college. "I thought I'd never get over it," he said, laughing softly. "But I did. You will too." His hand rested on the cushion, inches from mine, and I felt the pull again, stronger now. Then the power flickered back on, the harsh light jarring us. Ezra groaned, shielding his eyes, and I laughed, the tension breaking. But it wasn't gone. We decided to watch a movie to kill time, settling on some cheesy rom-com. Halfway through, I caught him staring at me instead of the screen. "What?" I asked, my voice unsteady. He shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "Just wondering what you're thinking." I was thinking about how close he was, how his shoulder brushed mine, how I wanted to close the gap but didn't know how. The movie droned on, but my focus was on him, the way his laugh lit up his face, the way his fingers tapped the armrest. When the credits rolled, neither of us moved. The storm was quieter now, but the air between us crackled. "Ezra," I started, my voice shaking. He turned, his eyes locking onto mine, and I saw its same fear, the same want. Before I could overthink it, I leaned in, my lips brushing his. It was tentative, barely a kiss, but it set my heart on fire. He froze for a second, then kissed me back, slow and deliberate, like he'd been waiting for this as long as I had. When we pulled apart, breathless, he smiled. "Took you long enough," he teased, but his voice was soft, vulnerable. I laughed, relief flooding me. The storm outside was fading, but inside, something new was beginning, something terrifying and beautiful. Morning light filtered through the rain-streaked windows, pale and fragile. The storm had passed, leaving a quiet that felt too loud after last night's chaos. Ezra and I sat at the kitchen table, coffee mugs between us, the memory of our kiss burning in my mind. I didn't know what to say. Was it a mistake? A moment born of whiskey and candlelight? Ezra seemed calm, stirring sugar into his coffee, but his eyes kept flicking to me, searching. "You okay?" he asked finally, his voice gentle but edged with worry. I nodded, though my stomach twisted. I wasn't okay, I was terrified. Kissing him had cracked open something I'd kept locked away, and now I couldn't unsee it. We tried to act normal, making small talk about the flooded streets outside, but the air was thick with unspoken questions. What were we now? Roommates? Something more? I wanted to ask, but fear stopped me. I'd spent so long running from myself that standing still felt like falling. Ezra broke the silence. "Last night, Did you mean it? His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the mug a little too tightly. I swallowed, my throat dry. Yeah, I said, barely audible. Did you? He smiled, a small, real smile that made my chest ache. Yeah. That should have been enough. But doubt crept in. I wasn't out, not really. I'd never said the words aloud, never claimed that part of myself. Ezra was open, unafraid, but I was still half in the closet, haunted by my past. What if I hurt him? What if I couldn't be what he needed? We spent the day cleaning up after the storm, mopping water that had seeped under the door, checking for leaks. It was mundane, grounding, but every brush of his hand against mine sent sparks through me. By afternoon, we were laughing again, the tension easing. He teased me about my terrible mopping skills, and I shoved him playfully, my hand lingering on his arm. It felt natural, but it scared me how much I wanted it. That night, we ordered pizza and sat on the couch, closer than before. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. Jamie, he said, his voice low, you don't have to figure it all out today. But I'm here. Okay. His words were a lifeline, and I clung to them. I leaned against him, my head on his shoulder, and he didn't pull away. But the world outside our apartment wasn't as kind. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister, the only family member I still talk to. Heard you're in New York. Dad's asking about you. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told her about Ezra, about last night, about any of it. The thought of my family knowing made my skin crawl. I put the phone down, but Ezra noticed. Everything okay? He asked. I wanted to tell him, to spill the mess of my past, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I kissed him again, harder this time, desperate to drown out the noise in my head. He kissed me back, his hands finding mine, and for a moment, it worked. But I knew the past wasn't done with me, and it wouldn't let me have this without a fight. Days passed, and the city recovered from the storm, but I was still caught in one. Ezra and I were something now undefined, fragile, but real. We stole kisses in the kitchen, held hands under the table, but every touch felt like a risk I wasn't sure I could take. I started noticing things about him I'd missed before, the way he hummed while sketching, the way his laugh filled the apartment. But with every moment of closeness came a wave of fear. I wasn't ready to be open, to face the world as someone new. Ezra seemed to sense it, giving me space but never pulling away. His patience made me feel worse, like I was failing him. One night, we went to a bar in Williamsburg, a place he loved with dim lights and live music. His friends were there, a loud, welcoming group who knew him as bi and didn't blink twice. I envied their ease, their openness. When Ezra introduced me as his roommate, I felt a pang. Was that all I was? I didn't correct him, but it stung. At the bar, a guy named Leo, one of Ezra's old friends, kept watching us. So, you two a thing now? He asked, grinning. Ezra laughed, glancing at me, but I froze. Just roommates, I said, too quickly. Ezra's smile faltered, and I hated myself for it. On the walk home, he was quiet, his hands in his pockets. You didn't have to say that, he said finally. I get it, but it hurt. I wanted to apologize, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. He squeezed back, but the silence between us was heavy. At home, we kissed, but it felt different, tentative, like we were both waiting for the other to break. The next day, my sister called. Dad's sick, she said. He's asking for you. My world tilted. I hadn't seen my family in years, hadn't spoken to my dad since I left. The thought of going back to Georgia, to that house full of judgment, made me sick. But the guilt was worse. What if I never got another chance? I told Ezra about it over dinner, my voice shaking. He listened, his hand on mine, and said, "You don't have to go. But if you do, I'll come with you." The offer stunned me. I couldn't imagine him in that world, facing my parents' disapproval. But the thought of him there, by my side, gave me courage I didn't know I had. We spent the night talking, planning, dreaming. He told me about his hopes for the Futuria design studio, a life where he could be himself. I told him about my writing, the stories I'd never shared. For the first time, I felt like I could be honest, not just with him, but with myself. But the trip to Georgia loomed, and I knew it would test everything we were building. The train to Georgia was a blur of steel and green fields, Ezra's hand warm in mine. I'd agreed to let him come, though every mile south tightened the knot in my chest. My dad was in the hospital, heart trouble, my sister said. I didn't know what I'd say to him, or if I could face the man who'd once told me I was a disappointment. Ezra was a steady presence, sketching in a notebook or pointing out random sights to make me laugh. "Look, a cow with attitude," he said, nodding at a field. I smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. What if my family saw us together? What if they said something to hurt him? I'd never forgive myself. We arrived in my hometown at dusk, the air thick with humidity and memories. My sister, Lila, picked us up, her eyes lingering on Ezra. "You didn't say you were bringing someone," she said, her tone neutral but curious. I introduced him as my friend, the word feeling like a betrayal. Ezra didn't flinch, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. At the hospital, my dad looked smaller than I remembered, his face pale against the white sheets. My mom was there, her lips tight, barely acknowledging Ezra. "Jamie," Dad said, his voice weak. "You came." We talked awkward, stilted about nothing important. I wanted to ask if he regretted what he'd said all those years ago, but I couldn't. Not yet. Ezra stayed quiet, giving me space, but his presence grounded me. That night, in a cheap motel, we lay side by side, the silence heavy. "You don't have to hide me," he said softly. "I can handle it." I turned to him, my eyes stinging. "I'm trying," I whispered. He pulled me close, and I let myself fall into him, the warmth of his arms chasing away the cold of my past. The next day, things unraveled. My mom cornered me at the hospital. "Who is he, really?" she asked, her voice sharp. I froze, the old fear rising. "My roommate," I said, but she wasn't fooled. "This isn't right. Jamie, you know what the Bible says." Her words cut deep, dragging me back to that scared 16-year-old. I wanted to scream, to tell her I was done living her version of right, but I just walked away. Ezra found me outside, sitting on a bench, head in my hands. He didn't ask what happened, just sat beside me, his shoulder against mine. "I'm not ashamed of you," he said, "and you shouldn't be either." His words broke something in me, and I kissed him right there, in broad daylight, not caring who saw. It was reckless, terrifying, and the most honest thing I'd ever done. But the fight wasn't over. My dad was getting worse, and I had to decide stay and face my family's judgment, or leave with Ezra and the life we were starting to build. Back in the hospital, the air was thick with antiseptic and tension. My dad's condition had stabilized, but he was still weak, his eyes heavy with pain and something else, regret. Maybe. I sat by his bed, Ezra waiting in the hall, giving me space I didn't want but needed. "Jamie," Dad said, his voice raspy. "I wasn't a good father." The words stunned me. I'd waited years to hear something like this, but now it felt too late. I didn't understand you, he continued. I still don't. But I don't want to lose you again. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I told him about my life in New York, about my writing, about Ezra carefully, testing the waters. He didn't say much, just nodded, but it was more than I'd expected. My mom was harder. She pulled me aside again, her face a mask of disapproval. You're choosing sin, she said, her voice low but venomous. I didn't back down this time. I'm choosing to be happy, I shot back. If you can't accept that, that's on you. Her silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Ezra and I left the next day. The train ride back to New York quiet but not heavy. We held hands, no longer hiding, and it felt like a victory. Back in our apartment, the world felt different, brighter. Somehow. We cooked dinner together, laughing over spilled sauce. And it hit me, this was home. Not just the apartment, but him. But life wasn't a fairy tale. Work was grueling, and doubts still lingered. Was I enough for Ezra? Could I be open in a world that wasn't always kind? One night, I found him sketching a portrait of me, my face soft in pencil lines. This is how I see you, he said, handing it to me. Stronger than you think. I kissed him, pouring everything into it: fear, hope, love. Then my sister called. Dad wants to talk again, she said. He's trying. Jamie. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. I told Ezra, and he smiled, pulling me close. You're doing this, he said. You're facing it all. And for the first time, I believed him. We started building something real: dates in Central Park, late-night talks, moments that felt like promises. But the world outside was still there, waiting to test us. And it would, sooner than I thought. Fall settled over New York, the city alive with crisp air and golden leaves. Ezra and I were finding our rhythm, learning each other in ways that went beyond stolen kisses. But the world has a way of intruding, and it came in the form of a letter from my mom. It was waiting in the mailbox, her neat handwriting a jolt from the past. Jamie, we need to talk. Come home for Thanksgiving. No apology, no warmth, just a demand. I showed it to Ezra, my hand shaking. You don't have to go, he said, but I saw the worry in his eyes. He knew what this meant to May: a chance to mend things, or to break them for good. We decided to go together, a united front. The drive to Georgia was long, filled with music and quiet moments where I'd catch him watching me, his smile soft. But as we pulled into my hometown, the old fear returned. My parents' house looked the same: white picket fence, Bible verses on the walls. My mom greeted us stiffly, my dad weaker but trying to smile. Dinner was tense, every word a minefield. Then it happened. My mom brought up family values, her eyes on Ezra. We raised you better, she said to me. I snapped. You raised me to hide, I said, my voice steady despite the rage. I'm done with that. I love him. The room went silent. Ezra's hand found mine under the table, his grip tight. My dad spoke up, his voice frail but firm. Let him be. Mary. It wasn't acceptance, but it was enough. We left the next day, the weight of the fight lingering but lighter. Back in New York, we threw ourselves into our life as art, my writing, our love. But challenges kept coming. Ezra got a job offer in Chicago, a dream gig that could change his career. We could go together, he said, but I saw the fear in his eyes: fear I'd say no, fear I wasn't ready. I wasn't. The idea of leaving New York, of starting over again, terrified me. But the thought of losing him was worse. We fought not angry, but raw, laying bare our fears. I don't want to hold you back, I said. He grabbed my hands, his voice fierce. You're not. You're why I want this. We decided to take the leap. Chicago was a new storm, but we'd faced worse. Together, we could face anything. Chicago welcomed us with biting wind and endless possibility. We found a tiny apartment in Wicker Park, our furniture a mix of thrift store finds and Ezra's sketches pinned to the walls. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I started writing again, pouring our story into words. Ezra's new job was demanding, but he thrived, his designs gaining attention. We built a life, one moment at a time, mornings tangled in bed, evenings exploring the city, nights where we'd talk until dawn. But the past wasn't done with us. My dad called one day, his voice stronger. I read your story, he said. I'd sent him a draft, a fictionalized version of my life, not expecting him to care. I'm proud of you, he said, and I cried, the phone shaking in my hand. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a bridge one I hadn't thought possible. Ezra's family was different. His parents welcomed me, their home warm and open. At their Christmas dinner, his mom hugged me, saying, "You make him happy." It healed something in me, a wound I hadn't realized was still bleeding. But life wasn't without storms. A coworker of Ezra's made a snide comment about us, and I saw the hurt in his eyes. I stood up for him, my voice steady, and it felt like a triumph. We were learning to weather these moments together, to stand tall in a world that didn't always understand. One night, under a sky full of stars, Ezra took my hand. I want this forever, he said, his voice steady. You and me. My heart raced, but not with fear, with certainty. Me too, I said, and we kissed, the city lights sparkling around us. The storm that trapped us in that Brooklyn apartment had changed everything. It forced me to face myself, to choose love over fear. Ezra and I weren't perfect, but we were real, and that was enough. We'd built something stronger than any storm of life. A love, a future. And as we stood together, I knew we'd face whatever came next, hand in hand, unashamed and unafraid.